And really, again, I feel like I just want to start maybe by just taking a breath, if we can, if you can indulge me. One, it'll help soothe my nerves a little bit, but also just to center us to taking the time out of everything else that is going on. And part of that act of self-love and self-care is to log in perhaps today and just give yourself that gift. So if we can just take a breath in, connect to your why. What is it that brought you into this work? What is it that sustains you in it? I love this work. And I hope that you love it as much as I do. But I will say, when I was asked to talk and thinking about this theme of we rise and like, what does that mean? This action verb of to rise, right? To stand up, to face and to confront. And I will say that as a social worker, I think that to give some context, I was in schools for 15 or 14 years before I moved into this position that I feel so lucky to be in. And part of that is one, because I don't feel like I ever had it. I think as social workers inside schools, we oftentimes are standalone. We're by ourselves. Who do you turn to? Who do you talk to? Who do you consult with? Am I doing this right? How do I process what is happening? How do I make sure that I'm not bringing my own stuff into a space or taking some things home with me in a way that's not going to serve? And being in this position, my only hope is that I'm able to give an opportunity for others to have something that perhaps I was lack of. And for that, I give a lot of thanks to all those that I have encountered, because it is your presence, the students that we service, the families that we work with who have really shaped and developed me into who I am. But when I think about this word, to rise, or this action of rising, I also have to be honest and say that a big struggle, I think, and what I have learned in this position again, is the things that I thought internally were some challenges, and being reassured, and also being energized in a sense to say that some of the concerns I have are universal in a way that I didn't have an opportunity to understand before. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I have heard in this position that I have been in, yes, there is the connection to resources. Yes, there is the struggle in dealing with families and students that are really, really struggling, and the colleagues who are struggling. But there's something to be said about also working inside of a system and knowing that part of the advocacy that we do is to speak up against the system that employs us, and to recognize and to bring credence to the fact that there is an imperfection that exists there. And when we're asked to address issues, that we cannot pretend that that's not something that's going on. And the assurance, I guess, that I have in that regard is, as I hear more and more the struggle, because I think it's a very real one, how do you stand up to or speak to administration, to colleagues, to the system at large, to say some of the things that are going on are contrary to the ethics that I hold, are contrary to, these things that guide my practice. And where do you take that? And so as I think about, again, this idea of rising, I think there's a rising also that needs to take place in terms of how we speak about this important work that we do. How do we unite around this important work that we do? And really leverage to move us out of these magical unicorns that just go in and fix and solve things, but to say that we come with a knowledge base, we come with a fundamental understanding and a sense of agency and awareness that makes us poised and very unique to be great agents of change within the school systems. And I think that means also educating those around us, which is exhausting. To have to give an explanation to and say, I also bring this thing forward, and you have something that you can learn from me. And we don't have perhaps the luxury of having 20 other colleagues in our direct orbit to bounce things off of or to build the ammunition of. And so perhaps in that resource page, you know, I hope that there is an opportunity to say, where is the place that we can come together, that we can really try to promote, because we don't just do clinical work, right? We don't just do that. We build systems and structures. We lobby with our legislators. We talk to the people in our communities. We build relationships with those around us. We understand that the human capacity is what drives the work that we do. And so part of that mission, again, of rising up is to speak to those spaces that make us uncomfortable. We ask families and students to lean in. How do we also lean into one another? You know, Dr. De La Cruz was talking about the need for self-care, a core tenet of our work, right? It's in our ethics. It's in our values that we hold as a profession. How are we growing and developing? It's not just some like, la-di-da, this is what we do, but it's part of our practice. And I think it's probably also really hard for us to do, because also part of our practice tells us what? That we give willingly of ourselves into spaces, that we assist those who are most vulnerable in those spaces. And sometimes that becomes to the detriment of ourselves. No doubt the last couple of years have been immensely hectic. If you are new into the school system, I give you accolades beyond recognition, because you have stepped into you have stepped into a situation where you are confronting a myriad of things, both inside a school system and as a society as whole. The racism, the impact of these injustices that are happening around us. And this amount of resource that we feel we can tap into. But the power that we have is certainly of the collective. And so I ask again that we find an opportunity to rise into that, to lean into that, because that is where the power sits. The best mistake the DOE made, I think, is bringing voice to our work. So I give thank you for doing that. And I give thank you to each of you for your attention to this and for your commitment and for the recognition that, you know, you give and you give, but also here today, my hope is that you are receiving, because I know 2 hours doesn't make up for it. Even if it's 15 minutes of that, not going to make up for it, but it is a beginning. So thank you.